The Tuesday, July 11th, 2023 meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll just read a short announcement about an opportunity that we give our residents to come to Open Podium. Open Podium is an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to Eden Prairie City government prior to each council meeting. Typically are held the first and third Tuesday of each month, but during summer, it's one time a month, usually in the middle. If you wish to speak at Open Podium, please do contact the City Manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, phone number, and subject matter, so we can be better prepared for you. Open Podium is not recorded or televised. If you have questions about Open Podium, please do contact the City Manager's office. Mr. Getchell, we have a couple proclamations. I believe you'll turn it right over to Mr. Lothammer, but I'll turn it over to you first.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. We do have two proclamations. We don't have any visitors for either of these, but Mr. Lothammer has an update on both, and then, Mayor, we're going to ask that you read both of the proclamations.
Mayor, council members, I just wanted to highlight a few things with People Fest. As you know, we've been putting this on in conjunction with the school district as well as the foundation, and many other of our community groups have helped over the years to make this a really special and unique event for the community. And it's that time of year. We do have a kickoff. In the end, we've kind of called it a People Fest party, and it's ended the events, but this year it's a kickoff, and then many of the events come after that. So just to call people's attention, Sunday, July 30th from 3 to 7 at Starring Lake. Quite a few performances, food trucks, display tables, and so a great time to come out and meet your neighbors and interact. I know it's something that many of the council members have attended, as well as school staff and administration and elected officials too from the district. But during the week then following that, we have things like music performance, Ecuador Manta, heart and soul drumming, also some trips down to the Midtown Market to look at different types of crafts. It's a chance to go on a interfaith field trip, and so quite a few activities that people can take place in to get to know the many cultures that make up our community. To learn more about it, our website, the city website, is a great place to go to find out exactly what times and what locations, and most of them are at no cost and don't require an advance sign up, but there are some that do.
Thank you, Mr. Lothammer. These special events across the year, I think, add such flavor to Eden Prairie culture and to our life. We hear all the time how important they are, and we had a budget discussion this evening on 2024 and 2025, and there was, I think, a fairly small, relative to other budget items, line item for many of our events, which, again, people prioritize, and this is but one of them. I feel like I know someone that named People Fest. I'm trying to think who that might be. Maybe Councilmember Narayan, I think you came up with that one. So come on, you're famous, you can admit that. So it was a good choice. I am going to read.
Actually, Mark Weber sitting there and smiling. And
is it Mark Weber, actually?
He helped me as well to start this thing.
Well, we have, between the two of you, then we have the honorary people here that are responsible for naming it. So Mark, thanks for all your work also through the years. I'm sure you had a lot to do with People Fest in other ways as well. So I will read a proclamation, People Fest Week, whereas Eden Prairie is a community composed of people from many backgrounds, races, ethnicities, abilities, and identities, and whereas we are a city that is committed to the promotion of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and whereas our community is more vibrant because of our diversity, and whereas cultural sharing leads to greater understanding and appreciation, and whereas People Fest, a community celebration of culture, is an annual week-long celebration that honors and celebrates the range of traditions that tell the rich story of our community. And whereas People Fest offers many free opportunities to experience culture through stories, food, music, dance, visual art, and more. And whereas the celebration's main event is the People Fest Party, I don't know if you named that one though, it's pretty cool, from 3 to 7 p.m. on July 30th at Starring Lake Park. And whereas the People Fest Party includes live music and dance performances, demonstrations, and art experiences, as well as booths with a variety of cultural and educational organizations sharing their stories, activities, and outreach. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Eden Prairie City Council encourages everyone to take part in this community celebration of culture. And further, the Eden Prairie City Council does hereby proclaim July 30th through August 5th, 2023 as People Fest Week in Eden Prairie. Ronald A. Case, Mayor, on behalf of our council, Kathy Nelson, Mark Freiberg, PG Narayan, and Lisa Toomey. Great, thanks to your staff also for, I'm going to comment later on in this meeting about 4th of July, but all the good work you do on all these events, but particularly People Fest and the People Fest Party. All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
I think we're back to Mr. Lothammer again.
Yes, the next proclamation is to celebrate and recognize 50 years of the Eden Prairie Community Band, started back in 1973, and going through history, 25 years it was recognized for their contributions to the community by Mayor Gene Harris and the original band leader, M. Stark, and that was a pivotal time in the band's evolution, and they've continued to grow and be more community-minded. They play when the theater needs an orchestra. You see some of them at our community events, and they will play at 20 different performances across the metro area this year alone. And they're actually playing tonight. That's why their representatives aren't here tonight to be recognized, but we will pass that back along to them. For this organization, they have a website of their own, epcommunityband.com, so people can go and look for the performances there. They will play quite a few times at Starring Lake. And one of the things that I think council members, you'd be proud of is about a year ago at our Parks Commission meeting, 2 of their representatives came to the commission meeting to present to the commission all of the things that the community band does for our community. And one of the members that was only a part of the community band for the last couple years, but had been a part of several other communities' bands over the years, talked about how welcoming that this band is. And there isn't a threshold on talent, and that everybody has a chance to come and be a part of it and improve and learn from each other. And there weren't pecking orders, and it just felt good to be a part of this community band. And it's one like they had not been a part of before. So that, I think, also made our Parks Commission members proud to know that that happens out there, and community is being built in all areas of our community. So we really thank them for all they do for many of the performances and how they complement all of our special performances at our events, and wish them another many, many years of performing.
I met M. Stark in 1982 and have had fond memories of him since, taught with him over a decade. So it's nice to hear his name again as well. Also, for those of you, I'm not sure who was out that evening, but June 30th, Friday evening, we kind of kicked off our 4th of July celebrations, and we were at Starring Lake Park, and the community band played a patriotic set. They're amazing. I mean, if they don't have a threshold on talent, then they're very fortunate and lucky, because they certainly attracted talented people. It was really, really good. And again, we had, I don't know, you know the numbers, it seemed like a couple hundred residents that were there in attendance. So that's great. All right, I'll read a proclamation. Eden Prairie Community Band's 50th anniversary, whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band enriches the lives of thousands of area residents each year through performances both in Eden Prairie and throughout the Twin Cities region, and whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band builds community through music, and whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band displays Eden Prairie's standard of excellence in all their performances, and whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band provides a creative outlet for local adult musicians of all ages, and whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band is committed to equal access, providing free concerts throughout the year, And whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band adds a high-quality musical element to several city events each year, and whereas the Eden Prairie Community Band has represented and served the Eden Prairie community with pride for 50 years, now therefore be it resolved that in recognition of the Eden Prairie Community Band celebrating its 50th anniversary, the Eden Prairie City Council does hereby proclaim July 23rd, 2023 as a day of celebration in honor of the community band in conjunction with its 50th anniversary concert. And further, the Eden Prairie City Council encourages residents to join them at the Starting Lake Amphitheater for this community celebration of the Eden Prairie Community Band's 50th anniversary at 6 p.m. Sunday, July 23rd. Ronald A. Case, Mayor, on behalf of council members Kathy Nelson, Mark Freiberg, PG Narayan, and Lisa Toomey. Congratulations to the Eden Prairie Community Band. You know, we're a community, yes, we can clap. We're a community that officially started as a city. We were officially a village in 1963. And therefore, many of our institutions emerged in the late 60s, early 70s. So that's why, if you're noticing, there's a lot of 50ths out there. Historical Society had it some years back. Forest Hills Elementary just had their 50th. Fire Department had a 50th. Where are we? At some point back a little bit. Police Department was 73. Is it this year? 73, I think, so the 50th. So that's why, because we are a community, basically exactly, I would say, 60 years old, with a lot of our institutions starting soon in the years following that initial vote of the community in the fall of 1962 to incorporate.
And
Mayor Don Rogers, first mayor. Yes.
and I came to this country 50 years ago as well.
Did you really? Well, that's definitely, we need a proclamation at some point on that. Can you work on that, Mr. Getchell? I think that's nuts, really. You are a living embodiment, though, really, of just the wonderful part of diversity, equity, inclusion, and
Actually, 51 years, I think. I
okay,
came
then
in
forget it. We missed our chance.
1972.
Has to be a 50. No.
Sorry, it's 51. I'm 1 year ahead of him.
All right. We'll maybe make an exception. All right. Before we make the motion for approval of the agenda, I would like to add just a quick council member report that actually I'll probably share it if it's okay with you, if we can do it impromptu, but just talk about the 4th of July and the amazing really participation of our police and fire and public works and parks and staff and volunteers, just phenomenal. So if you can help me with that. Any other items to add?
A round of applause for
Well, we can do that, but you're stealing the thunder here. We're going to do that during my count.
okay,
No,
okay,
we can clap twice.
We thought you were doing it now.
I just agree with you.
You
I
just
think
get excited.
So it was an awesome event.
Totally get it. They were amazing. And we will have that opportunity, and I will be calling on you to lead the applause. So any other items to add to the agenda this evening? So is there a motion then to approve the agenda with my addition?
I'll move to approve the agenda with
Okay.
your addition.
Great. Is there a second?
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes, any items either in the workshop minutes or the city council meeting to edit, tweak, correct, anything? If not, is there a motion that you could include both?
Move to approve the following city council minutes. Council workshop held Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. City council meeting held Tuesday, June 13th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. So we move to the consent calendar, and item M, approved change order, 62nd Street Improvement Project, is funded by United Health Group. Optum, it's part of what the Shady Oak, all the rebuild that happened in there some years back. And this is an addition of finishing off something. At any rate, I work at United Health Group, so I'm going to recuse myself. So if I could have a motion to approve consent calendar A through L and then N and O. So A through O without M. There could be a motion around that.
Move to approval of items A through O minus item M.
Is there a
of the
second?
Consent calendar.
Yep, thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Could I have a motion just for item M?
Move to approve change order number 5 for the West 62nd Street Improvement Project, item M.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I abstain. All right, Mr. Getchell, we have a couple, I don't know if it's perfunctory, it's important, it's ordinances, but it's somewhat internal. Go ahead.
Mayor, good point. Yes, not necessarily housekeeping, but these are internal staff-driven updates to city code, chapter 9 and 11. A lot of these, two of these updates that our community development director is going to take us through, were driven by our comprehensive plan update. So, yeah, these are coming from staff through our Aspire 2040 process. First one's related to a new zoning district called Flex Service. And as I said, Julie will give a presentation, and then you need to hold a public hearing, and this would be the first reading of an ordinance.
Great, Julie.
Good evening. So we're here tonight to talk about the Flex Service Zoning District, and I have a PowerPoint to share with you as well. So when we, as a city, we're looking at the preparing the Aspire comprehensive plan, we created a new land use category called Flex Service. And there were two general areas within the city that were guided for Flex Service. They're shown on your screen. The first one is just north of Highway 5 along Martin Drive. And the other is at Pioneer Trail and Pioneer Trail, so near the Super America and the Well Driller site and other businesses that are located in that area. So when the city was evaluating the industrial uses that are currently within the city and looking at the wide range of industrial buildings and categories of things that happen within the industrial district, these two areas jumped out at us in particular because they are a little older than some of the industrial areas that you see up in the Golden Triangle, and we were starting to see a lot of these businesses and buildings being repurposed. And so rather than being reactive to a lot of different uses that were coming into staff and saying, is this an appropriate use for this area, we wanted to be proactive and identify what types of uses we'd like to see in these areas as they begin to be repurposed. So as a part of the comp plan, we included the Flex Service land use designation. So tonight we're here with a zoning district to complement that and pair with that land use category. So the Flex Service zoning district, as I said, not only proactively addresses those adaptive reuses, but it's intended to provide some flexibility and opportunity for unique characteristics in those two particular areas in town. The intention is really to incentivize the location of certain uses that aren't ideally situated in, say, town center or TOD or the Golden Triangle industrial area. So we wanted to establish some zoning regulations only. This action tonight would just create the language to be included in the zoning ordinance. It would not rezone any properties. That would be a subsequent action that would come before you at the request of property owners in the future. So the 5 main incentives in order to increase flexibility in that area that we looked at were site design, permitted uses, parking requirements, building materials, and signage. And I'll do just a brief overview of each of those 5 areas. So from a site design perspective, we looked at proposing setbacks that, when compared to other industrial uses, are reduced a bit from what you see in the Golden Triangle, again, in order to provide some flexibility, trying to entice appropriate uses to those areas. And then also looking at reduced lot sizes and lot dimensions that more closely reflect current conditions in these older industrial areas. From a flexibility of uses standpoint, the Flex Service Zoning District really is a hybrid of uses. Generally in the city, you see a category of uses that are largely industrial in the industrial areas and commercial being completely separate with very little overlap. This district really strives to provide a mixture of both of those uses. So you can see that uses such as micro distilleries and auto repair would be allowed in this area, as well as some properties that are adjacent to principal arterial roadways would be allowed retail up to 100% instead of only the reduced rate that's allowed in the in the industrial districts. The remainder of the flex service would allow up to 25% of the floor area to be used for retail uses rather than the 15 that's currently allowed. From a parking perspective, there would be 3 options, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in the next slide, but the users could either come in and meet the established parking requirements that exist in city code. They could seek a PUD waiver if they had some unique flexibility that was needed, or a third option would be to prepare a parking plan reflecting their business need for council approval. And that would be able to be processed as a by right type of standard rather than requiring the review of a PUD, and it would streamline the process for those uses. The code would outline what criteria would need to be met in order to qualify for that parking plan, and that's all included in the draft ordinance. At a minimum, each site would be required to provide at least 5 off-street parking stalls. From an exterior building material standard, additional flexibility is being considered in this district as well. In the graphic on your screen, you'll see there's a little bit of color coding going on. So those street frontages that are outlined in red would be required to meet the commercial standards. So the 75% Class 1, 25% Class 2 building material standards that you're all very familiar with. The yellow frontages would be required to meet the industrial standards. There's just a few less Class 1 materials in the list on the industrial standards rather than commercial. And then the green frontages would be allowed a new proposed standard, which is 60% Class 1 and 40% Class 2. So that would be established by right in the code. And the intention here is that those frontages are not visible from the public street. It takes into account some existing conditions in those older areas, still requiring a high level of finish, but not necessarily quite as high as you'd see in some of those other areas in town. And it would also allow for more back of house type of uses as well. From a sign perspective, the freestanding sign requirements would be the same as the current industrial standard, so you'd be allowed one 80 square foot sign on a street frontage. Any additional frontages would be allowed a 50 square foot sign, which is just a little bit more than what's currently allowed in the commercial district. And from a wall sign standpoint, signage would be allowed on building facade up to 80 square feet in size. Multi-tenant signage would be increased from the 10% that's currently allowed in code up to 15% in this zoning district.
I have a question.
Sure.
The signage, do we have a spec in terms of how bright that could be, or the luminescence of the light?
Mayor, members of the council, we do have lighting standards, and there is a certain foot candle measurement that must be met with all lighting on site. So photometric plans are submitted with any lighting or site plans that we receive.
So somebody cannot put a really bright light and interfere with their neighborhood or something?
Correct, correct.
Thank you.
And with that,
Oh, sorry.
you beat me to it. You just had a question before that.
Yeah, I have a question, just in a macro way, but do municipalities own their zoning labeling process? Can they make up zones? Can they have as many as they want? Is there any statutory guidelines on that? Are there?
Mayor, members of the council, it is really up to the discretion of each individual city. So you'll see some similarities between municipalities, but a lot of times there are unique, I'm going to say, flavors from community to community.
Okay. Council, we can open up to a public hearing, or you can ask questions now or wait till we close that. What's your pleasure?
Public hearing.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the council this evening on this ordinance, first reading of the ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 11 and Chapter 9? Please come forward. Seeing none, If you wish, you can go ahead and make both motions, close the public hearing, make the motion, then we can still have discussion.
I'll move to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance to amend City Code Chapter 11 and Chapter 9 relating to a new flex service zoning district.
Is there a second? Second. Councilmember Narayan. So any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. All right, great. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The second update, second ordinance revision is related to parking. Julie has presentation for that as well.
Mayor, members of the council, as a part of auditing the zoning ordinance, which planning staff does from time to time to ensure it reflects current market needs as well as any emerging goals and policies of the city, we took some time and looked at the parking ordinance, and we have a few proposed amendments that we'd like to talk with you about tonight. At a high level, we'd like to reorganize some of the regulations to provide some additional clarity that would improve the readability and also provide some flexibility for things such as compact cars and shared parking in order to promote the use of those standards within the city. And then also adjusting parking requirements for a few of the uses that I'll go into in a bit more detail in future slides, as well as define some parking standards for daycare centers. So currently, the city zoning ordinance does not provide any provisions for compact parking stalls. We're starting to, at a staff level, get a lot more questions from developers about whether or not that is currently allowed. And historically, those have been addressed through the waiver process. So they've come in as a developer and requested a smaller width or a smaller depth standard to those parking stalls. We are proposing to allow up to 10% of the required parking stalls in a lot, ramp, or garage to be marked for compact cars that could be counted toward the parking requirement. They would still have certain standards for lot depth and width, and for spaces that aren't 90 degrees, they'd have to meet the ITE standards that would be applied as determined by the city. The compact stalls would be required to be appropriately identified, and all drive aisles would still be required to meet the city code standards. From a shared parking perspective, that's certainly something at a high level that the city has promoted through the PUD process. With this proposal, staff is asking for consideration for that to be allowed by right through the zoning ordinance. So it would require that 2 or more complementary uses to be coordinating with one another in order to share that parking. They would have to provide a parking plan to the city for our review, and also be able to demonstrate that there's no substantial conflict either in parking need or in circulation on those sites. And then agreements would need to be filed against the properties, and the city would be a part of those to be able to ensure that they remained in force and effect, and that the city was certainly aware of what the requirements of those agreements are. In looking at some specific uses, staff is proposing some changes. Currently, banks require 6 parking stalls for every 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. With the amount of online banking that occurs, there's a lot less traffic going to the brick and mortar stores. So in our research, we found that a lot of communities drop that standard down to 4 per 1,000. At a staff level, we're comfortable recommending 5 per 1,000 in the event that a bank building were to be reused and repurposed for a different use, that adequate parking would still be provided. If a bank goes in as a first-time user and wants to really utilize the 4 per 1,000 requirement, they still could do that because code allows them to show a certain percentage as proof of parking. And so there would still be that flexibility for the initial user of the bank, but meet the long-term need of any potential repurposing. Daycare centers currently do not have any standards identified specific to that use in the zoning code. So because that is a really unique use and traffic circulation becomes an issue as well, staff is proposing that parking standards be established that require one parking stall for every employee on the largest shift, another stall for any service vehicles that the daycare might provide, and then also one stall for every 6 children at the facility. And that really is a very clear and definitive standard, and through our research with other local communities, it really embodies a lot of what you see in many of the other communities as well.
Does that also allow if another type of business entity came into that building afterwards, there'd be adequate parking?
So we did, at a staff level, do a comparison of what that looks like compared to our general, say, 5 per 1,000 requirement for retail, and they mirror one another very closely. For gymnasiums, the current requirement, again, mirrors that retail standard of 5 stalls for every 1,000 square feet. That's incredibly excessive and would require a lot of parking. We have a handful of gymnasium uses in town, and all of them are non-conforming with that current standard. So staff has researched that quite in depth and is recommending 2.5 stalls per 1,000 square feet of floor area, and that would bring almost every one of the existing gymnasiums into compliance, if not closer to compliance. From a retail standpoint, we are proposing a bit of a sliding scale with regard to parking standards, very similar to how the zoning ordinance currently addresses office space. So right now, all retail is parked at a 5 per 1,000 requirement. Staff is proposing for those retail spaces up to 30,000 square feet that they remain at that 5 per 1,000. But as you get to that 30,000 to 200,000 square feet, there are some efficiencies in scale that occur between uses. So staff is proposing a 4.5 per 1,000 parking requirement. We do see some of our retail areas in the community already have PUD waivers that operate at that 4.5, and there are not issues at that level. At a higher level, 2,000 square feet and over, staff is proposing that parking standard reduces even further to 4.25. Again, in researching other communities with other sizable shopping centers, this is very in alignment with what you see in those communities.
Where does the Asia Mall fall in that chart?
They fall the less than 200,000 square foot.
And then today, do we know, because we were aware when we approved it that they were a little bit underparked, hoping that different uses from morning to evening would compensate, but do you know what that number was? If it wasn't 4.5 per 1,000, do we know what that was?
Mayor, members of the council, you're testing my memory, but I
No.
believe it's just shy of 4, maybe
Okay.
3.7,
Okay.
but I can confirm that for you.
Just more curious, because that's one of the more problematic areas, and I think, at least from what I've been hearing from the community, it's settled down, and I think it's much better. It'd be interesting, again, to just have real-life examples of how this plays out with some of the, especially when some of these large, big boxes convert to something else. How are we doing, with what we had originally approved? Okay.
Julie, I have a couple of questions. Do we have an ordinance regard to handicap parking? The number of handicap parking required per whatever the square feet or whatever it is?
That requirement actually lives in the building code rather than in the zoning ordinance, so that's applied universally through the building permit process.
Thank you. And 2 more questions. Second one is, we were talking about the bank. So what about just drive-through business? So you could have a drive-through business versus no drive-through at all. And do we need to differentiate in terms of parking?
Mayor, members of the council, the parking ordinance currently includes a provision that says if a specific use is not listed in the zoning ordinance, that staff through the city manager has the ability to establish whatever the parking requirement would be. So for instance, if we had a building that came through the process, it was drive-through only, no indoor seating, we would work with the applicant at a staff level to understand what their business need was. We'd take a look at traffic information and come forward or bring the application forward when there was a parking parking requirement established that made sense, and we would be recommending that to you through the process.
So in
As
that-
we did with Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So that, in that case, is float up to here, and then we approve that, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's fine.
And the
Last
issue is
question.
always about conversion, though. If Starbucks converts to something else and suddenly they need parking, they needed to have proof of parking, I'm assuming. Go ahead.
Yeah. And the last one, have we considered EV car parking specific?
So, Mayor, members of the council, we've talked about that as a part of the sustainable building standards. So currently, we have been working at a staff level to incorporate EV stalls through the PUD process, or even in instances where a PUD isn't requested, but through the development agreement, we've been negotiating that on a case-by-case basis. But my understanding is that because of current building code and state statute, we're not allowed necessarily to require EV charging as a part of the zoning ordinance.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean EV charging. I'd say, so I have a electric vehicle.
Okay.
To encourage more people to buy an electric vehicle, and said this stall designated only for electric vehicle, but no charging there.
That's not something that we've considered, nor does this particular amendment address.
Okay. I
You're
think
trying to
it's-
use that as a tool to incentivize.
Absolutely.
We'd want more discussion, I think, at some point to see if that
Yeah.
belongs in the private sector or what, right? Or if that's what something other cities are doing at some point, but
Yeah, just,
I'm not sure it's
I'm
part of
not
this
saying,
discussion this evening, but yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying go ahead and do it, or, it's something that we should think about. Again, we are incentivizing people to, the zero carbon emission, right? That's our goal. So for that, you have to have all kind of different incentive to make that happen. So here is another tool that we may want to consider for the future. Thank you.
Council, this is a public hearing, so are you okay if we go ahead and open it up and then we can continue discussion? So to the public, this is a public hearing. You are invited to come forward and address the council on this first reading of an ordinance to amend the City Code, Chapter 11, relating to parking. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address us? If not, council, if you're okay, go ahead and close the public hearing and make a motion to approve this ordinance change.
I'll move to close the public hearing and approve the first reading of the ordinance to amend City Code, Chapter 11, relating to parking.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right. Moving down to payment of claims. Were there any expenditures, any items that you wanted to question the amounts or what the money was being used for or sent for or to whom? All right, if not, is there someone that would make a motion to approve the payment of claims?
Move to approve the payment of claim as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call.
Councilmember Freiberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Councilmember Toomey,
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. So I did not prepare anything, Mr. Getchell, and I had briefly mentioned, I didn't even remind you, so I hope that's okay. But after the 4th of July, that event that evening, and just having the day to talk to many of you that were there, and Mr. Getchell and I hung out quite a bit. As mayor, just a lot of people that day up at Round Lake Park came up to me, and I don't think all day, I hope I'm not mistaken if somebody remembers being negative, but I don't remember a single negative comment from hundreds of people all day, just positive, and how appreciative they were of how well things were run, and the activities and the selection choice of bands and the police officers everywhere. They were phenomenal, and our firefighters that were there volunteering, and the traffic control, and our reserve officers, and I can go on, but our park staff, and the volunteers in their, I think, bright orange shirts, if I remember, just amazing. So I just wanted to call that out, but I want to give you an opportunity to add in who I missed, and then more of the back end operational side of it.
Mayor, you did a good job. You've covered a lot of the people, specifically our Park and Recreation Director, Jay Lothammer, our Recreation Manager, Lori Brink, and their team do a lot to make that happen. And there's months that lead up to the event and a lot of planning that goes in. And you sometimes get those sneak previews months ahead as to who the bands may be and when the fireworks will be and how their park will be laid out. And as you know, it was set up a little different this year because we're doing construction at Round Lake Park, and the Round Lake Park building wasn't ready yet. So, we had the music on a baseball field. And there were a lot of positive comments to that too that get us to think about, how we could change things in the future. Record number of food trucks. We keep adding
Right.
adding food trucks, and we've had vendors there. But as you said, great public safety presence, great assistance from Public Works, Parks, and streets and other divisions as well. And kind of run and manage through the Parks and Recreation Department. So, yeah, weather cooperated, and it went well.
And I know it's difficult to estimate large crowds. And I chatted with several police officers and comparing to years past. And of course, we were so spread. I mean, it was down by the lake and, up down closer to the high school, over by the tennis courts, pickleball courts, whatever now. Just people everywhere. And so I'd heard numbers 10 to 12,000. I think that's the kind of a general guess, but that's a lot of people. And when I was up at one point, I think before introducing the band Free and Easy, which they were amazing, and I asked people, raise your hand if you are a resident of Eden Prairie. And I feel like about 3/4 of the people's hands went up. And then if you were a visitor visiting Eden Prairie, about a fourth. I think that's a really nice mix. I mean, obviously, it's our Eden Prairie taxpayer money, but we're offering this incredible celebration to the people of Eden Prairie who clearly participated in large numbers. But it's also nice to be a really great place to come and visit. And, those people that visit our town possibly shop here, possibly move here at some point. We don't, need to always pat ourselves on the back and be number one in everything, but to be a town that is arguably puts on about the best celebration on that particular night in our whole region, and to be a place that's so positive and people talk so positively about it, that has to help. At the end of the day, it helps the home values that we have, because people want to live here. They want to move in here. We're known as a high quality place with moderate to low taxes. And in fact, this evening you showed a chart, a graph that over the last 7 to 8 years, if you add all the taxes together of the 8 or 9 communities around us, we were rock bottom lowest with the highest quality of life survey. You just don't get both of those in many places across the nation. And so things are really going well here. I hope I'm not just preaching to people that don't believe that. I want to be sharing the good news and having everyone go, yeah, that's right. No, I believe that. We have a great town. So 4th of July was just a wonderful embodiment of that, and it was exciting. Councilmember Narayan.
Thank you, Mayor Case. I agree with everybody. It was an awesome event. My family had a great time. I mean, this is one of these events. I get a chance to bring all my family. They all want to come there and actually celebrate. Couple of points. I really like the food truck aspect. It's funny in the beginning that we were walking around with mayor and city manager and so on. It's not that much line. Later on, I went there and get something. There's 30, 40 people, every food truck.
Every truck, yeah.
Every truck. And I said, no, I don't want to get anything. It's too long wait. So maybe we want to consider next year that more food trucks, because they definitely made money or making money. That's the other aspect is the music. It is great when you are by the stage, but if you can put some remote speakers by the fence area, consider that, and then people sitting there, and you could. And by the way, we have done this on an event on the St. Paul, but the Capitol, because it's so spread out as an event. So the remote speaker, and that's my comment. And it was a great event. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson.
I'd also like to say I don't think I've ever missed a fireworks display. And it might have been the best one I've ever seen from the city. So whatever you did this year, consider doing next year.
Great. Councilmember Freiberg.
I'd like to just piggyback a couple things here. I also noticed what you did as far as what you're mentioning about the food trucks itself and the lines. I think the variety, this is the best I've ever seen at one of our events. And what was it, double the amount of food trucks as last year? I mean, it just seemed like a wonderful, variety on it. And the one thing that a lot of people have told me is that how safe they feel there, with their families. The presence, there definitely was police presence, but it was in the background. I mean, they did their job. People felt good. And the coordination of it was one of the best I've ever seen, if not the best. Hats off to you. You did a wonderful job.
And the police, I'm going to get to you, Councilmember Toomey. So you better get ready.
Okay.
The police officers, we just have such a phenomenal culture. They are, I know, we're just like piling it on here in positivity, but they're just so nice. I mean, I hear that all the time, and they really were. They were so helpful. And we had a lost parent that took a little bit of time to find for a little 2-year-old girl that she wasn't lost evidently, but the parent was. And we found that parent, and everyone, the staff, police were just so helpful. But they're just really, we have a great culture of positivity with our police and fire and staff. And Councilmember Toomey.
Sure. It was fun. I mean, it was.
Thank you.
4th
So,
of the end. No, the 4th of July, I mean, it's always a really good time. And I appreciate all the hard work that everybody, the staff put in and the police and fire. And a highlight for me would be, guess what? The light up swords.
Yes.
yes, the
sold out.
crime prevention fund. Did I say it right this time? Finally. Sold light up paraphernalia that was a huge hit.
Yep,
So I hope that
we've
you all
been
did well.
For over 20 years, we've been selling.
That's great. Good for
yeah,
you.
it's very
Yeah,
good.
it was excellent. All right. Thank you. Thanks for allowing me, but all of us, to just call out our amazing staff in this event. Okay, Mr. Getchell, I believe we have a report that actually was council requested, and I'll just maybe preliminarily just say that we have a really great fire department with a wonderful response time here in Eden Prairie. And I don't know, Scott, you're going to give the data in a moment, but the perception or feeling was that we only had 1 or 2 houses a year maybe that burned significantly, or they used to say to the ground. That doesn't happen much with our good response time, but we had 4 within 5 weeks. Well, you're going to tell us, but a lot. And I guess that got us thinking and got some questions like, how many do we normally have? Why? I mean, no one knows exactly why, but why are these occurring now? Is it comparative to other cities? Just a lot of sirens going on around town this last month, and the 4 homes, and we feel really badly for the people involved. And we've had deaths this year for the first time that I remember in a long, long time. So we invited you to come and maybe baseline, give us benchmarking, give us some information and data. So thank you for being here. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for the team of people that you lead. We have an amazing fire department.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have a presentation that I'll share with you tonight as well. As you shared, it has been a busy 3 months for us. And so I want to give you a little perspective if we can have the presentation come up. Certainly, I want to give you just a short presentation as it relates to fire suppression. So over the last 3 months, we have certainly seen a higher amount of significant fire activity that's happened in our community. And that activity has affected people, it's affected their homes, it's affected our neighborhoods, and it's affected our community. It's also affected our responders because those have impacts on all of us as we respond as well. Before we dive into fires, let's just go big picture, 30,000 foot if we can. And so just to give you, over the last 4 years, you can see the fire department's call volume has continued to increase. And it's continued to increase just based on the demographics and the occurrences that happen in our community. So if you specifically look at where we were and are this year, this gives you a look at where we are through the end of June 2023. We're about 300 calls of where we were in past years this time as a benchmark. So our call volume, again, continues to increase. And you may say, well, why does it continue to increase? What's a portion of that? So here's a graph that looks at all of 2022. And so you can see about 68% of the calls that we went on in 2022 were related to medical or EMS related calls. And about 32% of the calls were related to fire related calls. If you look at where we are year to date, it's pretty similar, about 71% to 29%. So in that increase of call volume, a chunk of that has been because of our EMS response. We've continued pre-COVID and during COVID to be able to make sure we're partnering effectively to provide high-quality, efficient services with our police department and our healthcare provider, Hennepin EMS, to make sure we're providing that top-notch care in our community. So, big picture, all of our calls. Let's go specifically to fires. So here's part of that, maybe take the myth away. On average, over the last 4 years, we've had 58 fires that have happened in our city in a given year. And you can see as you look at the data from 2019, 43 calls, to where we are currently in 2023 with 19 calls year to date. So we're actually below where we would be in a normal year. But as you've stated, and you're very accurate, that our calls have been more significant, certainly in the last 3 months than they have been before. So let's talk a little bit about those fires. You may say, well, what are all those types of fires, Scott? So here's everything except structure or building fires. And so you may not hear about all these, but important that you, again, think about things like vehicle fires, appliance fires, cooking fires, a fire in a chimney, a brush or a grass fire, an outbuilding like a shed, a trash or a dumpster building, or something that doesn't fit into any of those other categories. And you can see those make up 25, 27, 56, 54, or 12 of our calls. So a pretty significant percentage of the types of events that we go on. Well, now let's specifically go to fires in buildings. And so here's our structure fire or building fires. And so I want to start at the very top. And just 2019, we had 18 total fires. And if you look at fire loss, it was about 1.3 million, which is a lot, but that's over 18 buildings. Okay. Now, if you go down to this year, you can see this year we've had 7 building or structure fires with $1.7 million worth of loss. And so what you're feeling and what our community is feeling is right on. They have been more significant in the last several months. It is, though, important for us to be able to think about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture around, we try to focus a lot on dollars saved. And you can see in this slide, we make a difference with our response. And I'm really proud of the men and women that we have in our fire department to provide the response that we do. The fire activity and fire growth continues to change significantly, not just in our city, but across the country, with things burning hotter and faster than they ever did before. And so that's a part of our response and our being able to be effective when we go to these types of events. You can see in the far side of the slides that when we do have fires, we track whenever we have to pull a hose. And so you may see a fire, for example, let's go to 2020, 27 building or structure fires, but only 14 times did we actually have to pull a hose to be able to put that fire out. So the difference might be it got put out with a fire extinguisher. It got put out with a sprinkler system. It got put out by the homeowner before we arrived. Yet it was still a fire that was in a building. And again, one of the things I think we do and have done extremely well, and it goes back to previous councils, previous mayors around adopting the ordinances that help us to be able to put sprinklers in buildings. And so again, we try to be able to really track when sprinklers do make a difference for us. So yes, we've continued to have a lot of fires. If you go to the 2023, you can see in the fires that we've had so far this year, all 7 of them have required us to be able to pull hose lines to be able to put those out. Now, over the period of data and over the period of time, that will likely change, and we'll see perhaps that number increase this year, but maybe we don't have to pull as many hose lines as what we've had to with these, that the data mark where we are today. So I would be remiss if I didn't end, though, with, I think, one of the most important parts of what we do. we want to be really good at going to the suppression activity that we do, but it's really important. And one of the core parts of our fire department has been for a lot of years, has been our prevention message. So 4 messages that I really want to leave you, members that are in the audience tonight, and our public, which is having smoke alarms in your home really does make a difference. To be able to have smoke alarms that are checked, check them regularly, make sure that they operate and can help get you out in the event that there is a fire, and change your batteries regularly. Good time to change our batteries is when we are moving our clocks forward, moving our clocks back. It's a great time to be able to change our batteries. Our second focus is really around having an escape plan. And it sounds really easy. And when your kids were maybe in elementary school, it was something that we talk a lot about with our fire prevention team when they do things with schools. As we get older, it maybe we forget about those things. And it's important for us to have an escape plan. For us to have an escape plan, not only where's our primary way out, but what is our secondary way out? What does that window or other spot look like for us to get out? A third message that's really important is if you have smoking material around your home, to be able to make sure that you discard that in the proper manner. One of the top reasons of fires in our state is improperly discarded smoking material. So being able to discard that appropriately will be a big difference. And finally, unattended cooking. One of the top causes of fires in our state and across the country is unattended cooking. And as you can imagine, in the world that we live in today, we're all distracted. You start cooking something and you get distracted by your phone or distracted by a conversation that might be happening in the home, and before you know it, there is a fire that's on your stove. And so for us, the prevention piece is so important, because if we can prevent the fire and have that percentage loss even be higher than what you saw on the slide before, we'd love that to be able to be that way. So again, key messages: have good working smoke alarms, make sure that you have a good escape plan, make sure that if you have smoking material in your home, you discard it properly, and finally, make sure that you are around when you are cooking. And finally, let me just end with a thank you, and really a thank you on behalf of our entire department. Thank you for you, Mayor, and the council for all your support that you do give to our department, as well as our community. We are very blessed to have the support we do of our community. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Council.
Chief Gerber, thank you so much for that update. I have a question. The medical calls, do we track in terms of by age? Is it, my thinking is our population in Eden Prairie aging, and are we getting more calls because of that, or is it just totally random?
Mayor, council, I would say we don't track specifically by age for every call that we go on, but absolutely demographics would tell us that as our population continues to age, we're going to have more calls. And that is true and happening today.
Right, so that means that rate cannot continue go up, right? I mean, that's
Correct.
A predictive perspective. Second one, very similar in terms of house fires. Our houses are getting old as well, right? So for example, my house, I think it's built in 94 or 95 or something. And I bet there are a whole bunch of houses built very old and with the material not today's standard. And that could also possibly have the house fire to go up as well. Is that my theories right, or?
Mayor and council, actually, not specific would I relate it to. Older home means you're going to have higher potential for a fire. Fires happen in all different types of structures, single-family homes, multi-family homes, older and newer. In fact, newer construction, we have great new construction and great homes that are built. Yet they're built differently today from a firefighting standpoint that makes more risk and more hazard for us than a home that was built years ago. It is safer in many cases for us to be able to get inside those homes because of how they were built, more so than a home that may be built today.
Thank you, Chief.
It's fascinating.
Is that why they burn hotter and faster now, because of the new materials or something?
Mayor and council, it's not necessarily the materials that they're built with, which is a part of it, but when you think about everything that we have in our homes today, many things have a petroleum base of some type to them. And so, the things that we have that our couches or chairs are made from, things our tables are made from, things that may be in our homes as decorative, all they're different than what they were 20, 30, or 40 years ago, which burns hotter and faster. You used to have up to 5 to 8 minutes to be able to get out of a home when there was a fire. Today, you have 3.
Really?
The PFAS conversation in our society today, which horrible chemicals that are lifetime chemicals, but we don't use them anymore in the production of things relative to fire prevention materials. Is that impacting that we haven't found a good replacement that would be a fire retardant kind of a chemical? Is that possibly part of what you're seeing?
Mayor, Council, I don't know that I'm a great expert to give that answer for you specifically as it relates to things that are being built, but I can tell you that we have changed out all of our firefighting foam, as an example, on all of our trucks to not use foam that has PFAS in it any longer. And we haven't found any degradation to how we're able to put out a fire because of that change.
The other thing is that when we get a medical call, or you all receive a medical call, we send a fire truck and several police cars and I don't know what else. At what point does HCMC then get called, or do they get called right away and they just have a longer response time?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, on every medical call, we're very fortunate to have our own 911 center, and so our dispatchers answer that. They're able to get some very good information. And then at the time of call, they also transfer that to Hennepin Healthcare. They provide some on-the-phone pre-arrival instruction with that homeowner at the same time that they're starting police and fire. And you've heard me say this before, but we are extremely fortunate to have the relationship we do in our city, that police and fire go collaboratively together. Based on the type of call it is, you may have no fire department responding and only law enforcement. You may have only fire and no law enforcement, or you may have a combination of both. And Chief Sackett, myself, and our staffs have worked hard at looking at the detail around that and projecting that into the computer system so it automatically starts the right resources at the right time.
And we're one of the few police departments, I believe, in the area that have all trained EMTs, right? That's rare. That's incredibly helpful, I would think, in emergency situations. And then one thing I learned, so I'll just share this with the public if you ever wonder this, but if you get a call in, I believe, so correct me here, but I believe we send everything. We send a fire truck out, we send everything almost, no matter what the call is. And I thought, wasn't that a waste? Wouldn't it be better to triage that? But if another call comes in and you've got 4 or 5 of your firefighters on this call without the truck, they've got to go back to the station. So it all made sense to me. So in case public's listening and you hear that you always see a fire truck going everywhere, it's because we want them there. So if we get another fire call, we're all prepared. Did I state that fairly accurately?
Mayor, Council, you're absolutely right. And it's not uncommon for us to have more than one call at the same time. And so the resources we have available to be able to send them to the appropriate spots. So a big fire truck may show up at somebody who's having a cardiac issue, help take care of that medical issue, and then leave from there to go to a fire alarm event or a crash that may happen on our roadways. So you're absolutely right in how you describe it.
Council, anything else? This has been really helpful. And it just underscores again how much we appreciate our fire and our police and the people that keep us safe. I think we have many jobs as a council, but it's got to be one of the very top, if not the top, to keep our people safe. And so to have the highest quality fire and police departments in the state, really, I think, and I think others acknowledge us as that, is comforting, I think, to the people of Eden Prairie. So thank you. Council, anything else?
I just want one more thing. And also bonfires, like we have guidelines, don't we, about people holding bonfires?
Yeah, Mayor, Council, we do have recreational guidelines that are out there on our website.
Okay.
So any citizen could go there to be able to get those. And ultimately, it's about having them in a ring so they're contained and having them far enough away from your home so something doesn't spread and catch your home or a neighbor's home on fire.
And with the drought, we possibly occasionally have issued in the past fire bans. I'm not sure we've gone there this year yet, but we're in the midst of not enough rain.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you so much. Thanks for all you do. All right. Mr. Getchell, anything else to come before the council this evening?
Mayor, there is not.
Council? All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn the city council meeting tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.